Alright, welcome back to Mr. Berry Lectures. This is Chapter 16, World War II, Section 3, the Holocaust. And this is by far maybe the most difficult subject that we will talk about this year. But let's jump right in. Main idea for today's notes: empire building. During the Holocaust, Hitler's Nazis killed 6 million Jews and some 5 million other non-Aryans, as they saw them. The violence against the Jews during the Holocaust led to the founding of Israel after World War II, and that is why it still matters today, because there is a great deal of conflict over there concerning the people living there. Alright, let's jump right in here. As part of their vision for Europe, the Nazis proposed a new racial order. They proclaimed that the Germanic people, or what they referred to as Aryans, which is a misuse of the term, were a master race. Like I said, this is a misuse of the term Aryan. The term actually refers to Indo-European peoples who began to migrate to the Indian subcontinent around 1500s, not, in fact, the German people who were blonde, blue-eyed, and tall from the 1900s. Aryans is one of your vocab terms there. It is to the Nazis, to be clear, the Germanic people who formed a master race. Now, the Holocaust begins. The Nazis claimed that all non-Aryan peoples, particularly the Jewish people, were inferior. Their racist message would eventually lead to the Holocaust, the systematic slaughter of Jews and other groups judged inferior by the Nazis. To gain support for his racist ideas, Hitler knew and knowingly tapped into a hatred for the Jews that had deep roots in European history. For generations, many Europeans, and Germans in particular, had targeted Jews as the cause of their failures. Some Germans even blamed Jews for the country's defeat in World War I and for its economic problems after the war and the Weimar Republic. In time, Nazis made the targeting of Jews a government policy. Example being the Nuremberg Laws. These laws, passed in 1935, deprived Jews of their right to German citizenship and forbade or made illegal the marriage between Jews and non-Jews. Laws were also passed during this period that limited the kinds of work that Jews could do and where they could live. Holocaust is one of your vocab terms. It is the mass slaughter of the Jews and other civilians carried out by the Nazi government and Germany before and during World War World War II. During World War II. Now, the Night of Broken Glass, something that you guys have actually seen before. Now, worse was yet to come. Laws are not generally violent, however people can be. Early in November 1938, 17-year-old Herschel Greenspahn, a Jewish youth from Germany, was visiting his uncle in Paris. While Greenspahn was there, he received a postcard, and it said that after living in Germany for 27 years, his father had been deported to Poland. On November 7th, wishing to avenge his father's deportation, Greenspahn shot a German diplomat or politician living in Paris. When Nazi leaders heard of this news, they launched a violent attack on the Jewish community. On November 9th, Nazi stormtroopers attacked Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues across Germany and murdered close to 100 Jews. An American in Leipzig wrote, quote, "Jewish shops' windows by the hundreds were systematically smashed and broken. The main streets of the city were positively littered with shattered glass, plate glass. It is the reason this thus is called Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass." Another 14-year-old boy described his memory of that awful night, saying, M.I. Labau says, "All things for which my parents had worked for 18 long years were destroyed in less than 10 minutes. Piles of valuable glasses, expensive furniture, linens, in short, everything was destroyed. The Nazis left us yelling, quote, 'Don't try to leave this house. We'll soon be back again and take you to a concentration camp to be shot.'" Close quote. This from M.I. Labau's book, Never to Forget the Jews of the Holocaust. Kristallnacht marked a major step up in the Nazi policy of Jewish persecution. The future for Jews in Germany looked truly grim, but of course, worse was yet to come. Kristallnacht is one of your vocab terms. It is the Night of Broken Glass, literally, and it is the night of November 9th, 1938, on which the Nazi stormtroopers attacked Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues throughout Germany. A flood of refugees. After Kristallnacht, some Jews realized that the violence against them was bound to increase. By the end of 1939, a number of German Jews had fled to other countries. Many, however, remained in Germany. Later, Hitler conquered territories in which millions more Jews lived. At first, Hitler favored immigration as a solution to the problem which he called the Jewish problem. Getting other countries to continue admitting Germany's Jews, however, became an issue. After admitting tens of thousands of Jewish refugees, such countries as France, Britain, and the United States abruptly closed their doors to further immigration. I don't know if this is exactly how this works in France and Britain, but I know in the United States there's actually a limited number that can come in from every country every year under immigration law, and I suspect that is probably what happened there, although it is more than certainly probably what happened here. Germany's foreign minister observed, "We all want to get rid of the Jews. The difficulty is that no country wishes to receive them." And because of this, Germany had a renewed Jewish problem. The Jews cannot leave easily, and so there needed to be another solution found. Now, he would do this, Hitler would, by isolating the Jews. When Hitler found that he could not get rid of the Jews through immigration, that is, them leaving of their own volition, he put another plan into effect. He ordered the Jews in all the countries under his control to be moved to designated cities. In those cities, the Nazis herded the Jews into dismal, overcrowded, and unhappy ghettos, or segregated Jewish areas. The Nazis then sealed off the ghettos with barbed wire and stone walls. They were prevented from leaving. They hoped that inside here the Jews would starve to death, or die from disease, or indeed fight each other and kill themselves. Under these horrible conditions the Jews hung on, however. Some formed resistance organizations within the ghettos, and they also struggled to keep their traditions. Ghetto theaters produced plays and concerts, and teachers taught lessons in secret schools. The scholars kept records so that one day people would find out the truth and know of the horrifying conditions of the ghettos. Nazis, however, found that this was not a particularly efficient means of reducing the population of the Jews, so another solution would then be devised. The ghettos, by the way, is one of your vocab terms as well. It is a city, neighborhoods in which European Jews were forced to live. Here we see on the bottom pictures of Jews, actually the entrance or the exit of a ghetto, where it says, "Here, Jews beyond this point are forbidden." Or literally it says, "This is the residential area of the Jews. Trespassing is forbidden." Alright, we'll go on. Now, the other solution that I refer to is the final solution. Hitler grew increasingly impatient, waiting for the Jews to die from starvation or disease in these ghettos. He decided to take more direct action. His plan was called literally the final solution. It was actually a program of genocide, or the systematic killing of an entire people. Hitler believed that his plan of conquest depended on the purity of the Aryan race, and to protect this racial purity, the Nazis had to eliminate other races, nationalities, or groups that they viewed as inferior, or as subhuman. Though the Nazis focused primarily on the Jewish race, they also included Roma, or Gypsies, Poles, Russians, homosexuals, the insane, the disabled, and the incurably ill. But Nazis again focused especially on the Jews. These are two vocab terms for you here. The final solution is Hitler's program of systematically killing the entire Jewish race, and genocide, the systematic killing of an entire people. Those are very similar, I realize, so please make sure that you do not mix those two up. Just in case you're not clear on what the picture here is, this is a pile of shoes at one of the concentration camps, which we'll talk about momentarily. These were taken from the Jews upon their arrival, and in many concentration camps they are a living sort of reminder of the number that were killed during this period of time in Europe. The killings begin. As Nazi troops swept across Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, the killings began. Units of the SS, Hitler's elite security forces moved from town to town to hunt Jews down. The SS and their collaborators rounded up men, women, and children, and even babies, and took them to isolated spots. Out from the city, they then shot their prisoners in pits that became the prisoners' mass graves. Jews in communities not reached by the killing squads were rounded up and taken to concentration camps, or essentially slave labor prisons. These camps were located mainly in Germany and Poland, and Hitler hoped that the horrible conditions in these camps would speed the total elimination of the Jews. The prisoners there worked 7 days a week as slaves for the SS and for German businesses. Guards severely beat and or killed the prisoners for not working fast enough or with great enough efficiency. The meals of thin soup and the scrap of bread and potato peelings most prisoners got on a daily basis, possibly as many as one time a day. Many of these prisoners lost 50 pounds in the first few months. That is an incredibly unhealthy rate at which to lose weight, although I personally could probably lose that much weight and be fine. It is not a speed at which I would want to lose it at in the span of several weeks. Hunger was so intense in many of these camps, I recalled one survivor, that a bit of soup spilled over the edge of the cauldron. Prisoners would dig their spoons into the mud and stuff the mess into their mouths. The final stage. The final solution reached its last stage as early as 1942. At that time, the Nazis had built extermination camps equipped with huge gas chambers that could kill as many as 6,000 human beings a day. If you calculate that for a full year running at full tilt at 365 days a year, that's 2.19 million people a year. When prisoners arrived at Auschwitz, the largest of the extermination camps, and various others as well, they paraded before a committee of SS doctors. With a wave of the hand, the doctors separated the strong, mostly men, from the weak, mostly women and children, the elderly and the sick. Those labeled as weak would die that day. They were told to undress for a shower and led into a chamber with fake shower heads. After the doors were closed, cyanide gas poured from the shower heads. What was also frequently used was something called Zyklon B. All inside these chambers were killed within a matter of minutes. Later, the Nazis installed crematoriums or ovens to burn the bodies and hide the evidence. Of note, these Zyklon B chemical that they used was also of use in the United States at the same time. The reason that it was in use in the United States was as a pesticide. It was there to kill bugs. In Germany, I'm sure they viewed the Jews in very much the same way, which is very sad. In fact, a lot of these cans actually were labeled as materials for the relocation of the Jews, or something to that effect. The survivors. Some 6 million European Jews died in those death camps in the Nazi massacre. Fewer than 4 million survived in Europe. Some escaped the horrors of death camps entirely with the help of non-Jewish people. These rescuers, at great risk to their own lives, hid Jews in their homes or helped them escape to neutral countries. Those who survived the camps were changed forever by what they'd experienced there. As Elie Wiesel, nearly 15 years old when he entered Auschwitz, noted in a little piece of audio here, a segment which we will now call Never Shall I Forget. You will see that he was marked greatly by this period of time.
Never shall I forget that night. The first night in camp that turned my life into one long night 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children, whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget the nocturnal silence that deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget those things, even were I condemned to live as long as God himself. Never.
That, I think you will agree, is some fairly chilling stuff. In Section 4, we will see how the Allies will begin to win the war and thankfully liberate many of these camps, examine the conditions of the home front, and talk about one of the other atrocities committed during this war, the bombing of Japan. Thanks for listening. Bye.